Bienvenido a la Fundación para el Desarrollo de la Consciencia. Nuestra misión es elevar los niveles de consciencia en el ser humano. Integramos la sabiduría espiritual con el conocimiento científico. Esperamos encuentres este video de utilidad.
Hello. Good morning, all. So it's a pleasure for me to be here today with all of you. And welcome you to this event where you will have a unique opportunity to meet a spiritual master of the stature of Swami Purna under the subject Wisdom in Modern Times. Swami Purna will be introduced by Dr. Linda Spenning tomorrow. Today we will be learning with Gonzalo Rodriguez Fraile about the new scientific paradigm and how it is converging with what the perennial wisdom of humanity and the mystics always knew. I will now briefly introduce Gonzalo to all of you who haven't met him yet. Gonzalo is a native of Madrid, Spain, and fluent in English and Spanish. Gonzalo received a law degree from the University of Navarra, Spain, magna cum laude, in 1978. That year he also received the National Law Award for the highest academic average in law studies for the graduating class in Spain. In 1979, he completed a postgraduate studies in international law in Spain. In 1981, Gonzalo earned a Master in Business Administration degree from Harvard Business School. He has had more than 25 years of very successful and intense professional career. He's well known in the financial world since he has been the founder of many very successful companies like PRS International in the US, A&G in Spain, Prax Capital in China, and many others. He has served on the board of many important international companies, including the board of government-owned banks in Switzerland. Since his retirement from the world of business, Gonzalo has dedicated his life to spiritual growth and to the study of all this new scientific knowledge with the purpose of attaining self-realization and with the purpose of helping others grow in their level of consciousness and being more aware of the purpose of life and the way to attain happiness and freedom. Swami Purna has inspired and empowered Gonzalo to fulfill this mission amongst other leaders in the world that might be aligned with the same aspiration. I've been very happy and inspired since I was asked by Swamiji, that's how we call him, to serve coordinating all the details of the organization of this event. Therefore, I am here to assist you with anything you may need or any question you may have during this time that we will be spending together. I want to give a special thanks to Dawood Habib for his work and his support in making this event happen. And also a very immense thanks to Gonzalo for being the architect in making this possible. I am sure and I hope that these next 2 days will bring higher consciousness, new perceptions, and upliftment to all of us. Now I'll leave you with Gonzalo.
Thank you.
Okay, so good morning, welcome. And what we're going to do today is that we're going to be speaking about science today, okay? Not so much about spirituality and philosophy and all those things, although there's many implications of what we're speaking about science. There's many implications in all those other fields that will become apparent as we progress in the presentation. But when I say science, I know that at the beginning, for some of you, it's going to sound more like science fiction. Okay? And it really, that was what happened to me at the beginning when my mind started opening up to these ideas and discoveries. But because we have the time that we have to make a presentation, I think the best way for us to go through this today is the following, okay? Don't accept or reject anything that is said. You know, just open a window in your mind saying, if it were hypothetically true what this guy is saying, you know, how would that change my life or affect me, or how would I think differently about things? And then, if you think this has some potential for you, then the only thing we need to do is we verify whether it is true or not later. But the verification part is the easiest. It's either true or not true. But if we stop the presentation for verifications here and there, it's going to be a little more disordered. Okay? So what I propose is that I'll continue. I will be saying many times, this is proven by science, this is proven by science. Hold the window in your mind that might be true. And then I'm going to have afterwards a session of questions and answers, and even a video presentation from many top-level scientists today, short, 3 to 4 minutes interviews. That you're going to see how these things that we'll be talking about are really out there in the scientific world. Okay? So let's start from the beginning. Okay? The first thing I would like to say is that for the first time, and for the second time in the history of humanity, we are going through what I call a shift of paradigm. It's a new way of understanding the world and reality. And this really happened for the first time, in my opinion, it happened in the Middle Ages. Remember, because sometimes in the Middle Ages in Europe, guys like Galileo, Copernico, Giordano Bruno, and some of these Kepler, Newton, some of these people started what we call the scientific method as a way to investigate reality. Because before them, humanity really investigated reality through belief systems. And that's why we thought that the Earth was flat, because if you look, your perception doesn't really tell you it's round, okay? And there was no established way to investigate reality other than belief systems, okay? So, for the second time in the history of humanity, we are going through a change of paradigm, as it happened in the Middle Ages. The difference is, in the Middle Ages, it took about 200 years for this new knowledge to become applied in the world. There was no internet, there was no telephone, so the speed of the transmission of the ideas was much lower. But today, with the internet and everything else, any change in paradigm is very quickly established in the practical world afterwards. So we need to understand this, because if not, all of us will be a little really obsolete in our minds, thinking about reality. So, I submit to you that all of us are more than 18 years old, so all of us have been educated in the old paradigm, in the old way of thinking. We've been educated in school, in college, everywhere, in the old paradigm. And we need to drop that from our minds, because it's not going to be easy, because we have the habit of thinking that way, but we need to drop that in our minds, because there is a new paradigm of reality out there, and we need to find out, okay? So the first thing that I would say is that when I was a younger guy, a younger man, the way I thought about the universe, in a way, was a lot of material bodies, whether it's a body or a planet or a human being, but I thought about the universe as a bunch of material bodies separated from each other and suspended in space. Would that be a good definition of how we see the universe and the world of matter, okay? But see, new science tells us that this is not true. That what the universe really is a continuous dance and interaction of informed energy. So this is much different from this, okay? Our perception, and this interaction of, constant interaction of informed energy, we perceive it as suspended, separated physical things in space. It's amazing, but that's how we see it. If we had a camera, we had devices that would show our reality as it really is, you wouldn't see these bodies separated from each other, suspended in space. You would see a constant exchange of energy, quantum particles between us as we speak, as we interact. And therefore, we need to change our minds about this, okay? So that's the first thing I would like to say. We are moving from what is called a mechanicistic, okay, separated paradigm or fragmented paradigm to a quantum, organic, interconnected paradigm, okay? We're going to try to explain through this presentation what this means. Okay. So, the two more important things that the new paradigm is proving and is telling us are, in my opinion, are this. We have a new definition of what is a human being. And we also have an important idea that science has proven that's called downward causation. This makes a big difference in our lives, as we will see right now, okay? So, if I asked you what you think a human being is, all of us that been, yes?
Could you just repeat that? What was it? Something causation?
Downward causation. Downward causation. Downward. We've been educated in a paradigm that thinks in terms of upward causation. For example, you've been taught to believe that atoms create molecules and the brain creates the mind. Okay? Actually, it's the opposite. The mind creates the brain, so it has an organ to express itself through. Okay? So we'll get to explain this and the implications of this much more carefully in a second. Okay? But first, let's see what science is saying about what a human being is. Okay? When I was a younger man, if you asked me what is a human being, I would answer something like this. A human being is an animal with a brain, okay, that lets us think abstractly. Other animals cannot do that. And because I had religious faith, I would say that we also have a soul. Okay? That's what I would have said 15 years ago if asked what a human being is. Today we know, science knows, that the human being is a soul. Okay? And this soul is having a temporary experience in a vehicle, a dress, okay, which is this body that you see. Okay? So that's a big change, because it's not that I am an animal with a brain that also has a soul, and this you only believe if you have religious faith, because if you don't have religious faith, you just say you are an animal plus a brain. Now science is telling us, no, that's not. We are a soul that is having a temporary experience in a physical body that has a mind, an emotional body, as we'll see later, and a physical body. And this doesn't even exist in reality. And we'll get to that in a minute, okay? This is virtual reality. Okay. So this soul is eternal. And what happens is this soul needs to learn. Much like when you were a child, you had to go to school and learn. Okay, and you started in kindergarten, and you moved to middle school, and then from middle school you moved to college, and from college to PhD, or whoever did that or didn't do it, okay? So, the whole purpose of what we call the physical universe is to be a school for the learning of souls. So, some of you who have a Christian background like I did, you know that okay, let's put it in another different way. Okay, so this is a school of souls, okay? And just to give you an indication, they have just estimated that there is about 100,000 million planets only in the Milky Way that are in the same position to the stars as the Earth is to the Sun, meaning that they could have the same characteristic as the Earth to harbor life, okay? We're saying 100,000 million planets, only in the Milky Way. Now, the Milky Way is our galaxy, okay? It's one of the smallest galaxies in the universe. And the Milky Way has about 200,000 million stars. That means there's more stars in the Milky Way than there are grains of sands in all the beaches in the world. Okay? And they have discovered that there is at least 200,000 million galaxies. Okay? So this is really mind-blowing. Okay? Now, they've also proven that we live in a multiverse, not a universe. That means there are thousands and millions of universes out there. So our minds cannot really comprehend, what reality is out there. Okay, so let's go back to this. Human being is a soul. That's the most important change of the new paradigm. And we'll see how science is proving this later in the videos or in your questions, okay? The second change from the old paradigm to the new paradigm is the fact that science has proven downward causation. And this makes a huge difference for us. And we'll see how, okay? Now, let's get into this for a second. In school, when I was going to school, they told me that an atom was like a small solar system in miniature. Remember? We had a nucleus here, that's what I was told in school. We had electrons going around the nucleus, much in the same way as planets go around the sun. Okay? But the new vision of the atom is this. It's empty. Electrons are waves of probability that only collapse into a small ball of matter when someone tells them to collapse. And the question is, who is that someone? And where does that come from? Okay? So, now we'll get into this. So, remember, the atom is not a solar system as we were told in school. Electrons, as you will see in the video this afternoon very quickly, are waves of probability that only collapse. The technical name they use in quantum physics is the collapse of the wave function. You'll see that explained like that in books, okay? So, the electron only collapses into what we call matter, okay, when someone tells the electron to collapse. So, what science has proven is that we live in a sea of consciousness, sea of light, that's called the A field or the 0-point field, and some scientists call it the Akashic field, just because this was the name that the perennial wisdom of humanity had given to that field 5,000 years ago, before science could prove it. Okay? This is mystic knowledge. In summary, we can say that what science today is doing is science is proving the universe of the mystics. Okay? And that has for us many ramifications. Okay? So what happens is this consciousness field that surrounds us collapses the electron at will. Okay? So consciousness creates matter. And this is done through the Higgs field. I'm sure you've been reading in newspapers very recently the discovery of the Higgs field in the accelerator in Geneva. Okay? So consciousness collapses the electron at will. Okay? So, in order for matter to exist, in order for this table to be here or me be here, consciousness needs to collapse the wave function of the electron so you see matter here, there, or whatever. Okay? Now, scientists said, okay, we understand that consciousness collapses matter. We cannot continue to study the nature of reality or physical matter without studying consciousness, because this is the cause of this. There is no matter without this. So they started to study consciousness, and they came to the conclusion that the motivation, the intention of consciousness in collapsing matter was, as we were saying before, the growth of the souls. So essentially, what happens out there in reality, in the world of matter, is what your soul needs to grow more efficiently. Okay? So if you want something not to happen, then the best thing you can do is don't need the lesson. And as long as you don't need the lesson, the event won't materialize, because the universe is very smart, and the universe doesn't waste energy and doesn't make mistakes. So there is, much like in school, when you go to school and you pass a course, you don't repeat the course, you go into a new course. Okay? Okay. So we say that the human being is a soul. Okay? So this soul has available to it 4 filters or bodies to interact with the external world. Okay? And these bodies are the following. Okay? We have the physical body, and that's the only one we perceive and can touch, because that has lower vibration. Okay? We have the emotional body. See, previously we thought that we felt emotions in our brains. Okay? And I'm sure that's what you all believe today, because that's what medicine has taught us. But that's not true. We have an emotional body that is an energetic body, like the physical, but this is more dense energy, and that's how we can touch it. But we have an emotional body where we experience our emotions. See, the physical body is where we can experience sensations, meaning I touch this water and I know if it's cold or warm. Okay? That's what I can do with my physical body. But if I want to experience emotions or feelings, that is done in the emotional body. And I say we have an emotional body, and it's not really true. We have 7 emotional bodies. And the 7 emotional bodies are regulated by the midbrain. That's why we experience it as 1. But there are really 7, and you are very familiar with this because these are the famous 7 chakras, okay, of the whole literature. That's where we feel our emotions. Now, up to these 2 bodies, we share it, let's say, with a dog. A dog has a physical body, and a dog can feel emotions. When I come home, my pet pees on the ground, you know, and he's very happy. But see, a crocodile cannot feel emotions, because a crocodile doesn't have this second body. So in evolution, first you develop the physical body that you share with many animals, then we develop the emotional body that we share with advanced mammals, like dogs, horses, dolphins, okay? And then comes the third body, and that's unique to the human being, and it's called the lower mind. And this is the thinking mind, okay? Here is where we can reason. This is what we use to play chess, or to solve a mathematical problem, or to go through life making practical decisions. This is the lower mind, okay? And another body that we have is called in scientific books the higher mind, or the supramental body. That's how you will see it called in scientific books. This is the seat of intuition, not reasoning. Reasoning is done in the lower mind, in the neocortex, okay? Now, this is the bodies, these are the seats of instinct. Okay? So, as human beings, we are constantly using these 4 bodies. The only problem is that this supramental body here, or higher mind here, today, is only used by about 10% of the population, the higher consciousness. all the rest of the human population operates from here. Okay? Now, the problem is when you operate from here, okay, I need to explain something else before we get back to here to understand this better. Okay? So, we are saying that everything that exists in the universe is formed of only two components, okay? At the basic level, all of us, this table, this room, a thought, anything, okay? A soul, even God, is only made of two things. It's only two basic components. It's energy plus information. And you can call this informed energy. Okay? So, if you are talking about matter, how do you measure matter? You measure it by the size, by the density, or by the weight. Okay? And how do you measure energy? The only way to measure energy is by its vibrational frequency. Okay? And you talk about having a slow vibrational energies or very quick vibrational energies. Okay? We all are familiar with that. That's pure physics. Okay? Now, what happens is, what they discovered is that the vibrational frequency determines how much information that energy can carry. So, for example, I have here a pen drive. Okay? This is a 32 gigabyte pen drive. I cannot put 40 gigas of information here. I just cannot. Okay? If I want to put 40 gigas of information here, I have to get a 40 giga pen drive. I don't think they build those. I think they go from 32 to 64 or something. No? Okay? So that's obvious. Okay? But the same thing happens with energy. If I want to be able to hold more information, I have to increase the vibrational frequency. Because if not, I cannot hold more information than the vibrational frequency allows. Okay? So what is matter? Matter is a slow vibrational energy. Einstein proved that. We didn't have to get to quantum physics. Remember the famous equation from Einstein? E equals mc squared. Energy equals matter. Okay? It's the same thing, it's interchangeable. So there's no matter anywhere. It's just dense energy. Okay? And because it's dense energy, we can touch it. Think about, I will put this example in the presentation. Think about the propellers of a plane. Okay? If they are still, you can count how many arms. 3 arms, 4 arms. If it's moving very rapidly, you cannot count the arms. Okay? So, thoughts are things like a table. The only difference between a thought and the table is that the table vibrates in the third dimension, slow vibrational energy, and the thoughts exist between the fourth and the 8th dimension. Okay? See, the first thing we need to say too is that the universe is a multidimensional place. There are at least 40 dimensions in the universe, at least. Okay? When I say 40, let's agree here that any unit of measurement is artificial, meaning this is 1 meter. True? This is also 100 centimeters. This is also 1,000 millimeters. So we can get as subtle as we want to get in the subdivisions. But just to use a unit of measurement, we can talk about 40 dimensions in the universe. So now what happens with thoughts? And that's where we come back to the 4 bodies, okay? Thoughts exist between the 4th and the 8th dimension. And what that means is we have available to us many different kinds of thoughts, okay? And we feel like we think, not the opposite way around. Let me give you a quick example, okay? Let's assume you all made efforts to be here today. And let's assume I didn't appear, okay? So you can look at that event, me not appearing, in 2 different ways, and that's your choice. Way number 1, this guy's an idiot, I've done a lot of effort to be here, hasn't even bothered to show up. And if you think that way, you are not going to feel well. Okay? That's for sure. That's, feeling is a subproduct of thought. Okay? But if you think, well, I know Gonzalo usually, not only the time, usually a serious guy, and he's not here, so maybe something has happened, you know, maybe a force majeure thing or an accident or something, okay? Now, if you think that way, in terms of the same event, I submit to you that you will feel better than if you think in the first possibility, you know? So you have to understand that the way you feel, the way you experience your emotions depends on how you're thinking, okay? So, because feelings and emotions are a subproduct of thought, you have 4 dimensions of thoughts available to you. The 4th dimension are the slower vibrating thoughts, okay? And they always produce an uncomfortable feeling inside you, one you don't want to be in, okay? Thoughts of hate, separation, competition, vengeance, etc. When you're thinking that way, you feel very poorly inside. Okay? Then you go to thoughts of the 5th dimension. They vibrate a little higher than these thoughts. These are what we call practical thoughts. From this morning, I had to decide whether I was going to wear black pants or green pants or whatever, or whether I was going to have coffee or orange juice in the morning in the breakfast. You know, those are all practical thoughts. They are thoughts that don't make you very happy or unhappy. They're just practical. They give you inside of you like a neutral feeling. Okay? And then you have available to you thoughts from the 6th, 7th, and 8th dimension, and these thoughts vibrate much faster, and they have like a very good feeling associated to them as a subproduct. And we all know what these thoughts are. What kinds of thoughts are? Thoughts of love, generosity, service, cooperation. So this is what self-help, you know, books and literature call positive thoughts, and these are what they call negative thoughts. Okay? Going back to the body and the 4 bodies, what happens is this. Instinct, okay, is pre-rational. That's why we share it with animals, okay? Reason, obviously, is rational, and that's what comes from the lower mind, okay? And we can distinguish reason from instinct very, very easily, all of us can. Because when you're having an instinct, it's a direct input of information. We don't follow a sequential process. See, when I'm reasoning, I am going saying A goes to B, goes to C, goes to D, goes to whatever. It's a sequential process and it uses energy. You get tired when you think a lot. Okay? Now, intuition is not pre-rational but post-rational. Okay? So we need to, as much as we can, live our lives from this place. And the difficulty in doing that is that, at least for me, it was very difficult at the beginning, is that my education, by the culture, I was always taught to validate my instincts through reason. Obviously. I mean, that's very good advice for everybody. Meaning, if I didn't do that, I would weigh 400 pounds because I would eat everything I like, you know, or I would sleep with 1,000 women, or who knows, you know. I'm saying instinct has to be validated through reason because reason is evolutionary higher than instinct. So if given the choice of living your life from instinct or emotion or from reason, there is no doubt. You have to try and live your life from reason. You're a human being, not a dog, okay? But this is not enough. We have available to us the supramental body or the higher mind, okay? And this supramental body and higher mind is the seat of intuition. Now, the difficulty for all of us rational, professional people and, you know, and these types of minds, is that when intuition comes to us, it comes direct apprehension of reality. It's like an instinct, okay? And at least what happened to me at the beginning of my training in this is that every time that I had an intuition, I was also trying to validate it through reason. And I was castrating the intuition. So instinct and intuition come in the same way. It's very fast. I don't have to think about whether I like this food or not, or this other food, or this human being, or the other, you know? We all know that. It comes sort of direct to us. And we need to learn to distinguish it, because we need to trust this and not trust this. And the only way, after many years, because it was Swami Purna who gave me the solution of how to distinguish instinct and intuition, and he said to me, look, Gonzalo, instinct will never bring you peace, and intuition always comes with a feeling of peace as a subproduct. Remember, we thought we were saying we feel like we think. So intuition always lands on us with a feeling of certainty and a feeling of peace. With an instinct, is the opposite. For example, if I'm hungry and I eat, I will have for 2 or 3 hours feeling of peace, but in 3 hours it will start all over again. Same happens with sex or anything else, okay? So we have to understand how this works for us, okay? So, just to recapitulate a minute, we have said that the universe is not what we thought it was, that is certainly not a series of physical bodies suspended in space. We have said that science redefined our vision of the human being and said that the human being is a soul who's having a temporary experience in a physical body. We all are going to have about 1,000 of these before we're done, okay? Meaning, souls are created innocent. Souls are the sons of God, not physical bodies, okay? And because souls are created innocent, they have to go through ignorance until they reach wisdom, okay? And all of us here are in this stage here, one way or another, one place or another, okay? Because had we reached wisdom, we wouldn't incarnate anymore. School is over, and we will go. Remember I said there was 40 dimensions in the universe? Okay. So when I was a small child, I remember I went to school, and the image I had of God was this. It was like a white-bearded guy sitting in a throne, who was getting happier and happy according to how we behaved, and and punishing or whatever. Now, the vision I have of God today is much different because of all this information. Now, we have to understand that science will never be able to explain all the mystery of God. That's impossible. But science will give us more and more explanation along time and along the line, So now that I know that everything that exists in the universe is energy plus information, although I very well know that I cannot know God or understand God with the eyes of reason, I need to use the eyes of contemplation for that, and we'll get to that later. But at least if I'm going to use the eyes of reason, I think about God as that point in the universe where the vibrational frequency is infinite, therefore time is zero, and therefore it can contain all the information in the universe. Remember we said before that the capacity to have information in energy depends on the vibrational frequency. So the faster it vibrates, the more information you can get. So if the vibration is infinite, you can get all the information of the universe. And at that point, time is zero, obviously. If I go with infinite speed from here to that wall, it takes me 0 time to get there. And if I don't move, then it takes me infinite time to get to that wall, okay? Because the speed is 0. Having said that, what happens is you first start the descending process, This is the creational process in which the vibrational frequency begins to get a little slower and slower and slower and slower until it reaches the third dimension, which is us. Okay? And it's probably one of the slowest vibrating energy in the whole universe. Okay? The minute you come down from God in the, how say this in English, in the densification of the energy, then you find individual beings in the universe in all the dimensions. Okay? So science has proven, and this is astonishing, but science has proven the existence of angels. And angels is how we call them in the Christian tradition. I don't know, in other traditions, I think they call them ascended masters or something like that. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you call them, because they are what they are, regardless of how you call them. But these beings, in the other dimensions of the universe, provide service to the lower vibrational beings that have less information. So the higher vibrational beings with less information can grow through the dimensions of the universe, and that growth is a given, meaning there's no way not to do it, because the attraction of the higher vibrational energies over the lower ones is deterministic, meaning you cannot not grow. The only thing you can do is speed the process or slow the process with your intention and attention, but it's not such thing as not growing. All souls will end up going through this process of multidimensional universe until the end. There's no such thing as eternal hell. And hell, in any case, is not a geographical place, it's the lower states of consciousness, okay? So there is no eternal staying there, okay? Okay, so, to recapitulate, the universe is a different place they told us it is, the human being is a different thing they told us it is, okay? And everything works through downward causation. What it means really is that what this paradigm changes in us is that we recover our power, meaning that we are responsible for everything that happens to us. There is absolutely no way to continue to think in terms of the victim paradigm. You know, okay, some, you know, lots of things happen to me out of my control and I cannot do anything about them. That's not true. Because the only thing that happens to you is mathematically, with mathematical precision, the events you need for your soul to grow. So if you want to change the events that are happening to you, the only place where you can work is inside you. Because we are not doers of anything. Consciousness collapses the electrons for us. The only thing we do is that to the extent that we don't need a lesson, the universe will not present the exam. Okay? So when I talk to my children many times, I say, look, you know, there are two ways you can learn not to drive and drink. Okay? One way is that you drink, you drive, you get stopped by the police in the physical world, you spend 8 hours in jail, you spend $10,000 solving the problem, you have a criminal record for 2 years, nobody hires you, and you learn. Okay? Believe me, you will learn. But there's another way to learn, which is imagine all that in your mind. Go through the event virtually. Okay? And if you learn from your virtual exercise of the event, then you don't need the event to manifest in the physical world, because you don't need the lesson. Okay? So, if we are a soul, and if we are learning, one can, well, before we get to that, if everything is energy plus information, you may ask me, okay, I understand the energy part. Obviously, I thought this was matter, but I know it's dense energy. That's not very difficult to understand, you know. I mean, that's just the way to express things. But where's the information in the human being, you could ask me? You know, if everything is energy plus information, talk to me about the information part, okay? That's not as clear, okay? Okay, so let's talk 2 minutes about the information part in the human being, okay? Science has proven that we have 3 archives of information, like files of information in a computer, okay? You have different files. And the 3 archives of information in the human being are called the genetic archive, the character or personality archive of information, okay? And the 3rd archive is what science calls the consciousness archive. Let's explain the difference between these 3, okay? Obviously, we all know what these 2 archives are. You know, the genetic archive determines in this incarnation if I am a man or a woman, or blonde, or dark hair, or whatever, okay? The character or personality archive, we also know what it is. We don't have tendencies of personality since we're born, you know, and inclinations, and blah, 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 and gifts or not gifts, or whatever, okay? We are very familiar with these 2 archives. Literature, psychology, genetics have written about this extensively. These 2 archives, these first 2 archives have 2 characteristics, okay? The first characteristic is that they are corruptible. By that I mean that I can really mess with my genetic archive, or I can mess with my character and personality archive. Let me give you 2 quick examples. If I drink 5 bottles of whiskey tonight, tomorrow I will have a hangover. That's a given, okay? And if I do that every day, I will be messing with my genetic archive because I will probably develop cirrhosis or a liver disease or whatever, you know, okay? Now, in the character and personality archive, I can also mess with it. Now, if I allow too many negative thoughts, 4th dimensional thoughts, remember? To dwell in my brain for a long period of time, I will probably develop a depression. Remember downward causation? So it was thought by psychiatrists up to 10 years ago that depression was caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. It was a sickness, like the flu, okay? It's just that this sickness meant that there was a bad functioning of the chemical and neurotransmitter reactions in the brain, and that produced, or so did the psychiatrists think, negative and obsessive thoughts that you could not liberate from, okay? Now we know it's actually the opposite, meaning if you allow very many negative thoughts to dwell in your mind for a long period of time, those thoughts change your chemistry, okay? Remember downward causation. Everything, see, the higher vibrational energies have an effect on the lower vibrational energies, but not the other way around. So thoughts vibrate higher than matter, and therefore, actually, and I will show you some graphs now in a few minutes, shows thoughts change the physiology of your brain and the circuits you use to process information. So now, once the thoughts have changed your chemistry, then you have a double problem. Because, you know, you have, how to say in English, una pescadilla que se muerde la cola.
A vicious circle.
A vicious circle, that's a good way to put it, okay? So, but actually, the minute you change the thoughts in your mind, the chemistry changes. So you're in a depression, and you are able, just for one day, 24 hours, think positive thoughts all the time, the depression is gone. Boom. Much faster than the pills. Okay, let me read to you at this point a couple of things from a very famous molecular biologist. His name is Bruce Lipton. You can read a book from him that is out there. It's called in English The Biology of Belief. And in Spanish it's called La Biología de las Creencias. Okay? One of the things that Lipton says in his book, and all other scientists concur with this, is that the cells in your body are influenced by their environment much more than by the genes. We've been taught that because we have a genetical blueprint or whatever, that our lives is determined by our genes, but that is totally wrong, okay? Because genes are only a blueprint. And genes need to express themselves. And they, in that same blueprint of any gene, it's included thousands of different ways of possible expression of the gene. And which one are you going to connect to? You know, so the first thing we need to understand is not genes that control our destiny, it's our environment that controls our destiny. And what I mean by environment is not, you know, the weather only. I mean, it's the emotions we have inside us, the way we think, the way we eat. Everything is the environment, okay, in these terms, okay? Now, the actual quote from the book is, our existence is determined not by our genes, but by our responses to the signals that life brings. Okay? So why is that? Life brings events for our soul to learn. And our freedom allows us to either learn from that event or not learn from the event. So that's why there is a saying in English that says, whatever you resist persists. Because when you don't learn from the event keeps repeating and repeating and repeating until you do learn, okay? And you can use your freedom to accelerate your growth or to really slow down your growth because you are not taking advantage of the growing opportunities that the universe is putting in front of you, okay? It says, change your belief systems and everything changes in your life. Physical, external manifestations, etc. So your life is really controlled by your belief systems, not by your genes, okay? This is a new field of science called epigenetics, okay? And you can read about it all you want, okay? It continues to say, what I said before, that an atom has no physical structure. So matter doesn't even exist. An atom is like a vortex of energy with no physical structure. The only reason why we see physicality is because of our perceptions, not because of the reality of things, okay? Okay. And you know that thoughts sometimes use more energy than running in a race. And the physical body is highly affected by mind. Okay. Another thing that he proves is that the more you grow in consciousness, the bigger the area of the membrane in your cells, and that can be measured. Okay, it's a very interesting fact. Okay, so if we're a soul and we're here to learn, then what is it that we have to learn? You can ask me. When we went to school, we knew what we learned. We went to primary school and we had geography, history. There were the subjects that we needed to learn. We passed the course, we went to another year, and then we had other subjects, that we needed to learn. So you can ask me, what is that the soul needs to learn? Okay? And we'll get into it right now. Okay. The subjects that the soul needs to learn are called consciousness levels. Okay? And all souls have to go through these levels. And our souls, for millions and millions and millions of years, have been taking information from other realms. Okay? All our souls, we are not human beings, all our souls first took information from the plant, from the plant world. Okay? And that took millions of years because that obtaining information is automatic, since we don't need a brain. Since we didn't have a brain, we didn't have freedom. And because we didn't have freedom, all souls go through the plant realm more or less at the same speed. And it takes millions of years. When we've obtained all the information from that realm, then we go into the animal realm. See, all animals have souls. All plants, this table has a soul. Because if this table didn't have information, the second principle of thermodynamics, that's called the entropy principle, says that the tendency of all matter is to disintegrate, to disorganize, okay? So the only reason why this table can stay here for a long time as it is is because it has information that is keeping the elementary particles together in a certain way, okay? And that information is what we call soul in the scientific terms, okay? Obviously the soul of a table is not as advanced as the soul of a human being. It's a different thing, you know? But everything has a soul, a plant, table, even that stone. Because if the stone, we spend a lot of time taking information from the mineral world. And when our souls finish with all the mineral, the vegetal, and the animal realm, it starts obtaining information in the human realm. And for the first time, for the soul, we have a neocortex to do that. That is why at human level is the first time where souls go through the process of obtaining information at different speeds, okay? Because a human being, using his freedom, can cooperate with the growth plan for the soul or not cooperate. And if we don't cooperate, we are going to repeat. Much the same way as a child that doesn't pass the exams in the school year repeats the school year, okay? So, the subjects that the soul needs to learn are what we call the consciousness levels, okay? There are many models of consciousness levels out there. I'm going to show you a couple of them, okay? But let's start with one that is very, very simple, okay? This is the model of Schmedling, okay? And this model says that essentially we have, 4 levels of consciousness available to us on Earth, okay? This planet, I mean, in every school of souls, and believe me, there are many others in the universe, in all the schools of thoughts, of souls, at the human realm, you always have 3 levels of consciousness coexisting in that school. Much in the same way that in every school here in London, you have kindergarten, you have middle school, and you have high school, okay? And what happens is that every year, new kids come into the kindergarten, and some kids graduate from high school, and the number of students is constant, but there is a constant renovation of students because some come into kindergarten and some leave, high school to college, okay? So, in the human realm, here on Earth, the lowest level of consciousness that we're having today is what experts call level 2, because level 1 doesn't happen on Earth anymore. It did happen many years ago, but doesn't happen again. Now, level 2, you have to understand that 25% of humanity is in level 2. These are the people that make all the problems. And when you put the news, the terrorists, the criminals, the violent criminals, the people that traffic with drugs, with other people, terrorists, all violence, all physical violence is done at this level 2 of consciousness, okay? And level 2 has 3 characteristics. Conflicts are resolved by physical violence, okay? Al Capone doesn't sue you. Al Capone kills you, okay? Shoots you, not sues you, okay? The second characteristic of this lower level is that all systems of government are dictatorships, okay? If you go through Syria or Libya or Honduras or places that are less developed, let's say, than England, you get a dictatorship, you don't get democracy. They don't even have the institutions to run democracy even if they wanted to, okay? So, and the third characteristic is that they don't produce technology. They use it, they buy it, but they don't generate it, okay? So, 25% of the population, about 1,000 million people are in this level 2, and this is creating all the problems in humanity, okay? Now, 70% of population is what we call level 3, okay? If seen from space, the Earth would be considered a level 3 planet, of learning. And that's why it's blue. That's another subject, but there is a relationship between the color of the planet and the type of learning that it provides, okay? So, here in level 3, you have 3 characteristics, the same as in level 2. Conflicts exist, but they are not solved by physical violence, as in level 2. They are solved by verbal violence or mental violence, but not physical violence, okay? see, human beings have three levels of violence inside us. One is physical, but most people in this room don't have a problem with that anymore. It's not that we go out every day trying to hit anybody or kill anybody. But we have two other levels of violence. The second level of violence is verbal, and we do sometimes have a little verbal violence in us with others, you know, I suppose, okay? And the third level of violence that we have inside one, and the most difficult one to get rid of, is the mental violence. Because you may not be an physical aggressor to anybody, and maybe you are a restrained human being, and you don't do any verbal violence anymore either. But what about the mental violence? When you think this guy's an idiot, although you don't express it or do anything about it, okay? So, in level 3 consciousness, the three characteristics are, you don't solve problems by physical violence, you solve it by verbal violence, you know? I mean, I guess Cameron doesn't hit or kill, you know, the Democratic guy in the opposition, but he talks badly about him and he, you know, trips him up and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Obviously, it's very different to be in the low 3s than to be in the high 3s. Okay? It takes about 400 lives to go through this. So it's very different. Let me show you some differences, okay? When we get into the intention. Now, 5% of humanity are in what's called level 4 of consciousness, okay? And the three characteristics of level 4, to compare it to the other levels, are this. In level 4, the systems of government are not even democratic, because democratic is level 3. And democratic is still violent, because it's the government of majority over minority. But in level 4, the system of government is not dictatorship and it's not democracy, it's consensus. Okay? What problem could Teresa of Calcutta have with Gandhi? For goodness sake, I can't think about anyone. You know? Okay. Then, the second characteristic is that there is no more conflict, and therefore there's no more need to resolve conflict. They're all working from the common goal. What conflict will be there? Conflict only comes from the ego. I want this, you also want this, how do we negotiate about it, you know? In level 4, there's no more ego to speak about, you know, so there's no more conflict. And then, the third characteristic is that they would produce a lot of technology, it's just that they're not interested in it anymore. Now, this is the big quantum jump, okay? And the reason is that both in level 2 and in level 3, our basic intention is to get. That's the basic purpose in life, for us when we're at these levels of consciousness. And you could ask me, get what? And I would say, well, get everything we want to get. Power, money, relationships, sex, toys, you know, possessions. And in level 4, the basic intention is not to get anymore. You are already full. You don't need to get anything from anywhere. And because you are full, your basic intention is to serve. Okay? Now, remember I said before that when we finish the evolution of the soul in the human realm, all the other beings in the universe from, you know, in the higher other dimensions, the only thing they do is service. They don't need to get anything for themselves. Everything they get automatically thinking about it. Okay? So the only thing they can possibly do is serve. So until we learn to serve, and we do it as our main purpose, we will not finish the evolution of the soul in the human reality. Okay? That's what science is. And that's what spirituality has said, you know, for thousands of years too. So there is no discrepancy now between one and another. Okay? So this is like a basic, as you can see, model of level of consciousness. We can use a more detailed one. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I know you get the picture, okay? This is a more detailed model of consciousness, and this is, actually this model is from Hawkins, okay, from David Hawkins. You can use any other model. We can use Wilber, we can use Aurobindo, we can use many other models of levels of consciousness. Here, in the level of consciousness of Hawkins, you can see the following, okay? At the early stages of consciousness in the human being, up to this 200, all that is in black is negative. It really, this is negative energies that attract negativity all the time, you know, and unfortunately, about 80% of humanity is in these levels. And that's why the experience of life for people is usually not nice, you know, and they are full of problems and difficulties and negativity, okay? And well, this here is, we call it the scale, okay? Because this is the unit of measurement of the vibrational energy of the consciousness level, okay? We can measure it in many, many ways, but we have to understand one thing that's very important. 150 is not 2 times 75 for this model. This is logarithmically more powerful, okay? So, just 1 point difference in consciousness level is huge, okay, in terms of the power of the energy. So, again, here you can see that the big jump is here, in the line of 200 and in the line of 500. I will explain why. See, in the line of 200, here is where positivity begins, okay? But from here to here is the world of reason, is the world of linear thinking, okay? And for example, people like Gandhi, Gandhi was here. People like Einstein, people like Freud, people like the big scientists or the big philosophers, they calibrated at 499, okay? But they couldn't make the jump to the 500s, because in order to make the jump to the 500s, you need to abandon the linear domain of thought. And you need to open yourself to the mystery of the universe and to the miraculousness of everything, okay? So most people that you meet, okay, in your work, in your profession, they are somehow here, okay? Because from here upwards, it's only 5% of human. This is level 4. This is the level 4 of Schmidt, okay? When you open yourself to love, to joy, to peace, and to enlightenment, you abandon the linear domain of thinking, okay? And that's why it's only 5% of humanity here, okay? But if you go, you can see how they call the level, you can see the predominant emotion that you feel in every level, and you can see the life view that you hold in every level. Okay, so let's say if you are operating from pride, okay, this was the consciousness level of the British when they were occupying India. Okay, the emotion is dignity, and you see the world as a demanding place. That's why Gandhi really had no problem take them out of India without shooting a bullet, because Gandhi was operating from this level here. The power of this versus this is a joke, okay? So, you see the life view of each and all of the, you know, if you are in the, some people that you see in Africa dying from hunger with the flies on the faces, and they're in the level of guilt and shame and apathy. You see? They're the lower levels of consciousness, and their emotion is despair, blame, humiliation, and they feel miserable and condemnation and hopeless. Okay? So, really, the solution to all the problems of our lives is to grow the consciousness level. There is a scientific equation that says, I'm going to write something here for the future, okay? Happiness equal consciousness levels, okay? I submit to you, and we're talking about this dinner yesterday, that everything we do because we think it's going to make us happier. That's how you choose your job, or how you choose your partner, or your wife, or your husband, or not, or whether you decide to have children or not. At the end of the day, you make all decisions thinking that that will make you happier. If not, you will make those decisions, you make others, you know. So we all seek happiness in the best way we can think about it or conceive it. But the only way to be happy is to raise the level of consciousness, because happiness doesn't come from having the external events in your life to your liking. Happiness comes from your internal interpretation of the events in life, okay? So, when one is enlightened, one is happy 100% of the time. When one is in peace, one is happy 100% of the time, or in joy, or in unconditional love, okay? But when one is in anger, one is happy only 12% of the time. This is scientific. I mean, there are several psychologists here if you can prove this or some others, you know, but this is true, okay? So, I mean, we all try to be happy and we don't know how to. And what happens is the following. Okay. This again, the same level of consciousness with the basic emotional light view, which we saw before. And this is very interesting because I mean, I'm not going to explain this very much because I know we are going through time very quickly, but you can come later up here and see it for yourself and think about it, you know. Below 200, you operate in linear context, you are literal concrete, you are materialistic, you believe in cause and effect, you are pedestrian and mundane, you have left brain physiology, you have definable, describable, I mean, I don't even need to go through this for you to see it later and understand fully how everything changes in your life, in terms of everything, how you see things, how you operate, everything, in the different levels of consciousness. See, levels of consciousness are like energy attractor fields, and they really determine everything that happens in your life. The events you go through, the way you think, the possibilities of reacting to things, and they really condition your freedom very much, because if you are in a level of consciousness, let's say of 200, there's no way you can operate like Gandhi. No way, you are not free to do that. You can't. Okay? The same way I cannot teach chess to my granddaughter, yet. She's 6 months old, she's very smart, I'm sure, but I need to wait a few years until I can teach her to play chess, because I need to develop her brain, okay? So, but I will teach her, unless I have to be patient, okay? So, same with consciousness level. If you are a child in consciousness levels, you cannot play chess. You have to bring up your consciousness level. You may ask me, how do I do that? Okay? And I will tell you that intention is the engine of growth in the consciousness level. It's not brilliance. There are many brilliant, I mean, I'm sure Al Capone was very brilliant. I'm sure it's not easy to become the chief of the mob in Chicago, okay? I'm sure there's a lot of competition for that. So, so it's your intention, your purpose in life, that changes your consciousness level, okay? So, intention generates energy, okay? And I'll get to this later if we have some time. So, this is a very important piece of information. I think this is outstanding. Okay, to me it was. I mean, look, when you are between 1 and 200, the lower consciousness levels, this is the brain's circuitry that you use. Okay, the input goes to the thalamus, and goes very slow to the cortex and very slow to the amygdala. And that's why everybody in life is reactive. I will submit to you that if you are driving here in London, you know, in any street, and every car that passes by, you show him the finger, about 90% of the people are going to show it back to you. Okay? They have no other option. This is the brain circuitry they use. There's no way to prevent reactivity in this brain circuitry. Okay? Now, when you grow in consciousness level, the physiology of your brain and the size of the membrane in your cells changes. And now, when you receive an input, like seeing someone showing the finger to you, it goes very quickly to the cerebral cortex, very fast to the ethereal brain, very fast to the thalamus, and then you can control the response before it gets to the amygdala. Okay? So that is why, I mean, I don't have to tell you this, something you all imagine. Would you think that if Gandhi is going through the street and you show him the finger, what do you think he's going to do? Do you think he's going to react? No. You all know that. Okay? So who is going to react? All the rest of the population. And why is that? You may ask yourself. Because of the consciousness level that allows Gandhi to use this circuitry in his brain. Okay? And the rest of the world is using this circuitry. And there is nothing you can do, nothing, to help these people unless they grow their level of consciousness and develop the ability of operating this way. The same way I cannot teach chess to my granddaughter. Because she's 6 months old, she needs to develop her brain to admit in her brain the possibility of abstract thinking, not concrete thinking, before I can show her to play chess. Okay? That's not new information. Okay. Yeah? Okay. So it's 12 o'clock. We are going to have a quick break, and we will finish up the presentation in 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up to all kinds of questions that you may have, and we'll get into the fun part. And then finally we'll show a small video presentation. It's only 40 minutes, but it will prove to you that what I'm saying about these things is what the scientists are saying, and will give you more, more confidence in the information, I feel. Okay? So let's have a break for 15 minutes of coffee.